Devious that Bilawal Bhutto-Zardari is one of Pakistan's most misunderstood politicians in the country's history is a fact that has found its best expression from the criticism that he has been receiving from the political forces and non-political forces alike for ex- expressing openness to extraditing individuals of concerns to India, including the chief of Lashkar-e-Taiba, Hafiz Saeed, and the chief of Jaish-e-Mohammed, Azhar Masood.
The United
But I'm
Nations
saying
Committee.
they're
But let's
accusing
also
you
look-
of the very things that
No,
you're
no, it's
accusing
not.
India
I'm
of
sorry, there's
in
a
the
diff-
Indian Kashmir.
I'm
They're
sorry,
saying
there's-
human rights violations, they're saying threats,
Excuse me.
intimidation,
Human
arrests,
human rights
enforced disappearances.
human rights violations shouldn't be happening on either side of the border. But to equate the two is pretty preposterous.
Okay, so let me ask you the last, because we're completely out of time. Let me just ask you then, in conclusion, because like I said, you are the next generation. And if the next generation doesn't break from the script of the past, you'll be stuck in these cycles of enmity forever, both countries. So is there any one concession, one good faith gesture that you can offer to India? For example, India has been saying to Pakistan for years, if you can extradite UN designated terrorists who live in Pakistan, who've carried out strikes on Indian soil, why not start by saying we'll extradite two, let's say Masood Azhar and Hafiz Saeed, or if you say you don't know where Masood Azhar is, Hafiz Saeed, as a good faith gesture.
I think that one
But is there such a gesture?
extremely valid point you're making is about the next generation. The fact is, generation after generation, India and Pakistan have been trapped in conflict, historically over Kashmir,
Sure.
more recently over terrorism. As far as these confidence building measures as part of a comprehensive dialogue with Pakistan,
Okay.
where terrorism is one of the issues that were discussed. I'm sure Pakistan would
Would be open to that?
not be opposed to any of these things.
Okay.
At the moment, the frustration, so the cases that we've been successful in prosecuting against these individuals are our cases that we've brought as vis-a-vis terrorist financing in, etc. The cases that we're having difficulty in prosecuting these individuals are the ones that are of interest to India, and there's a reason for that. It's because India is refusing to comply with certain basic elements that require those convictions to take place. For example, it's important for you, if you want a conviction out of these courts, to present the evidence within these courts for people to come over from India to testify, to put up with whatever the counter accusations will be. If India is willing to be cooperative in that process, I'm sure there will be no hurdle in extraditing any individual of concern.
Okay,
and the day that someone like Masood Azhar or
Yes.
these individuals are in our custody,
Yes.
I believe they're in Afghanistan.
Okay.
There's a whole host, there's complexities there. The world's in a grey rather than a black and
Okay,
white.
you've opened up a whole new line about India's lack of cooperation, and there's a whole argument to how Pakistan has actually conducted those investigations, how those investigations have collapsed and the accused are free. But I don't want to go there. I want to.
You say they're free. I could deke Pakistan mein.
No, I'm saying that some of those accused in the 2008 Mumbai
I
attacks
am honest to my
are
complete
actually, according to the US State Department, under the protection of the government of Pakistan.
anything like, especially that Hafiz Saeed comment is particularly concerning, because if that's your understanding of the ground realities, that's not what's happening on the ground. You can't allow us to leave the fate
Okay.
of the people of India and the people of Pakistan to whether it is Hafiz Saeed or anybody else.
All right, fair
And
enough.
if we have to seize this opportunity in the crisis to have a conversation, to at least try.
Right.
We owe it to the future generation of Pakistanis in India. I am from a younger generation.
Sure.
I'm not locked in the same way that I believe it's a lot easier for people from other generations to talk about war, because the consequences of that war will be paid for in the blood, sweat and tears of the younger generation of India and Pakistan.
All right, let's leave it there. We're completely out of time.
Devious, we need to see Bilawal Bhutto's answer to the question in broad context.
Reporting on the actions of the Indian administration led by Prime Minister Modi in Gujarat, the Indian government still to this day censors any coverage, including that of the BBC, about Gujarat. My comments, which you allow me to answer,
Yes.
my comments was a call for Mr. Modi to review what he'd like his legacy to be.
Okay,
I believe that he's in a crossroads. He can either continue on this perception that we have,
Sure.
go on from being the butcher of Gujarat to the butcher of Kashmir and the butcher of the Indus Valley civilization, or he can be the true heir of the Indus Valley civilization,
Right.
push the case for peace, engage in a dialogue with Pakistan, which is the only legitimate way
I was just
to address
wondering,
any
though.
concerns vis-a-vis terrorism, to address the root cause of Kashmir, and to address any
Okay,
dispute
so I
on
was just
water.
wondering whether these sort of sweeping ad hominem smears, which can
I
get
love how
clicks
these-
and which can get virality. But at the end of the day, he is the Prime Minister of India, and if India and Pakistan need to talk peace, one day you could be sitting across from him. And that's why I just come once again to whether the choice of
I feel
language
just as
is
con-
conducive for that kind of objective.
I believe that the Indian
So-
Prime Minister has a thick enough skin that he'll be able to engage with me or anybody else across the table, just as, despite Mr. Modi's statement that the youth of Pakistan should eat bread or his bullet, I still believe that we will be able to engage in a dialogue. I don't think, as I said, these things are mutually exclusive.
there's
It's particularly important
Yes.
to draw the line when it comes to apartheid, cutting off food or war crimes, cutting off food or the water supply to civilian populations, violating international law.
Okay, let me ask you about the other comparison you made, which I found interesting, that you compared Mr. Modi to Netanyahu. You made that comparison on one hand, and you've also been lavishly praising Donald Trump on the other. You call him a peacemaker. This is the same Donald Trump who has a vision of Gaza which amounts to ethnic cleansing. He posted a video of Gaza as a sort of Trump Riviera, where he and Netanyahu are sitting on an AI-generated beach while the actual Gaza burns. This is the same Donald Trump whose administration is continuing to fund and arm the carnage in Gaza. And you're praising this person.
I'm praising this person's approach to the idea of peace, particularly in my context.
So you're okay with his funding, the government's funding of the carnage in
No,
Gaza?
obviously I'm not. It's your government's position, not mine. It's the Indian government's position to support that situation.
I'm not, again, Mr. Bhutto, I'm not representing the Indian
your
government.
words suggest otherwise. I don't know why I would get that impression.
How many times I can say that?
You've only said it once. The point is, I don't think that there's a dichotomy when clearly Mr. Trump has played a role in the context of the Indian-Pakistan escalation in achieving this ceasefire is certainly praiseworthy. Okay. I think the pertinent question to ask is why the Indian government is lying to its people, deceiving its media, and not being called out on the fact that it's trying to hide the role the US administration played in mediating this ceasefire.
Actually, the Indian position is that there was the involvement of the US as well as other countries, but ultimately the decision was taken between both sides. Can I move on from this to Kashmir, which you say is the core issue between both countries? India says it's terrorism. Pakistan says it's Kashmir. Let's focus on Pakistan. Kashmir, as you know, has remained an intractable dispute for years. In simple terms for our global audience, both sides, India and Pakistan, control one part of Kashmir. Both claim all of it. Now, of course, you can stick to your stated positions or find new ways to break the impasse. And I'm wondering, Mr. Bhutto, as a young next generation politician, do you have a solution which breaks the impasse, which is not just repeating stated positions?
Yes. I honestly don't mean to just be repeating stated positions.
Okay.
I understand that Pakistan has its position, and I believe that position is endorsed by the United Nations, UN Security Council. That's the position or the solution that I will seek through a dialogue. I understand India will come at it with their own perspective. I call this a core issue for two reasons. One, it has been a fundamental...
That's not my question. My question is an out-of-the-box solution. No, I'm only asking now because we're completely out of time.
लिख ले कि मेरा जवाब क्या होना चाहिए या सुनने को हौसला रखे. As far as my position on Kashmir, with one view, it's in line with as far as the United Nations Security Council resolutions and my belief that every conflict that India and Pakistan has had, or most of the conflicts that we've had, can be drawn back to this issue. The new dimension that this brings in the current context is, I believe that the way in which India is treating Kashmir, I don't want to get partisan about it. I just want to state it as factually as I can.
Okay. When you talk about India's conduct in Kashmir, that doesn't really address my question, because you're citing the situation in Indian-administered Kashmir, but on the Pakistan side, there's hardly a clean bill of health. The UN top human rights body said in its report on Pakistan-administered Kashmir that nationalist and pro-independence figures regularly face threats, intimidation, and even arrests. The UN says it's received credible information of enforced disappearance of people from Pakistan administered Kashmir. The amendments to Pakistan administered Kashmir's interim constitution retained clauses that directly contravene international human rights law.
As far as our law, whether it is in the context of Kashmir or overall in Pakistan, and its compliance with international human rights law, I would always like to see an expansive space for human rights. I've consistently advocated in my own context for more human rights, not less human rights. I agree that those would create problems, but I don't think that these organizations
This is the United Nations.
No, I'm not disputing that the report is from the United Nations. Let's go to the United Nations. Everything that is my sort of issue of concern, let's take it up with the United Nations.
Devarshin, you must have noticed that Bilawal Bhutto-Zardari has clearly linked his suggestion to a comprehensive, very comprehensive dialogue between India and Pakistan. And the whole world knows that India, which is being ruled by Sangh Parivar for 11 years, will never agree to any dialogue with Pakistan. And we must not also ignore the fact that it was hardly a week ago or 2 weeks ago that Bilawal Bhutto Zardari was successfully selling Pakistan's narrative in response to India's Pahalgam narrative across the world. Many as Abu Sarfaz Ahmad, Ya Rabu Gazetha, Karachi, Pakistan, Anna Sarfaz Ahmad, Naib Sultari Fijarida, Karachi, Pakistan. And he's a snow. Thank you.